A lot of people that watch my podcast, I think for a lot of us, you probably have not really experienced firsthand a woke church, progressive church, because a lot of us think we're probably mostly conservatives, right? And for a lot of us, we've never even stepped foot in a church like that. A lot of people might wonder, is that this even a problem? And so that's why I want to talk to you a little bit more about it, because I have had two very in-depth experiences with churches that started off, I think, okay, and then ended up becoming woke. And so I want to tell you about these experiences so that you can see how it can happen. Because I think that for a lot of people who've never experienced it, it can seem like, well, how could that ever happen? But it does happen, and it can happen to people who don't realize it's happening right under their noses. And so that's why I want to tell you about my experiences 2 different times with churches that ended up becoming more and more progressive, more and more woke. And so the first time that happened was when I was in college. And so this is when I was working on my PhD, my graduate degree. And so I had a group of friends, and we were all PhD graduate students. And so we were all working through the same graduate program together. And we were all Christians, and we all went to the same church. But we were in this upper level, academia, and, to getting PhDs, it was English degrees. We're all literature, English people. And so we went to church together, and we all started off, I believe all of us were Christians at the beginning. Everybody had professions of faith. I felt like I could see God working in everybody's lives. But we were also in higher level academia. Okay, now this is 30 years ago. Okay, so college life, especially higher level academia, is much worse now than it was 30 years ago. But even back then, the culture, you're starting to see the things that have now taken over colleges today. So it was the beginning of political correctness. Remember, political correctness started coming out about 30 years ago in the colleges and campuses of the United States, and started taking over. So that was already kind of becoming a thing. And this multiculturalism idea that, everybody's ideas are good, everybody's good. And, there's, just kind of this deconstruction, this breaking down of truth, that there's any kind of external truth. Everybody has their own truth, right? So that idea had already started taking hold in the college campuses at that time. And so we're surrounded by that. We're learning that. I must admit, there was a lot of ego going on in that group of us. There were 7 of us. And we were all going through the same classes together. We were teaching college as graduate assistants. And so we had a lot of ego. And that's how it goes in these, like people working on higher level degrees. We think we're so smart. We fancied ourselves as being these intellectuals, these deep thinkers, And and so, we just thought we were all that. And so the 7 of us started meeting once a week for Bible study. That's how it started. We wanted to study the Bible together. We were going to do that once a week. And so we started meeting. But because of our egos and because of the ideologies that were surrounding us and kind of had filtered themselves into our brains, we started together, when we got together, we liked to have these deep philosophical conversations, And so we started deconstructing things, religion, Christianity, because we just thought we were so smart. We were so brilliant. We could pick out all the problems that we were finding in the church we were going to and in Christianity. And it's interesting because I think back on it, and at the time, the level of faith that I had, the level of our faith was very superficial. We were not deep. We thought we were really deep, but we weren't. I still didn't understand anything at that point of sanctification and surrendering and submitting to Jesus. And so we were tearing apart legalistic church, basically. And but we weren't filling it up with anything else. We were just instead being filled with, all of the lies of our culture. And so what happened? We met like this regularly for a couple of years, several years. And so over that time, it's like nothing was off the table. We could question anything, And so after a while, we're like, what do we really even need to go to church? Is that even important? And so we all stopped going to church. Is it really so bad to, go party? And, so we started drinking alcohol together. And like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a drink every now and then. So I don't want to act like I never do that, but Jesus did. But that's a whole nother topic. We'll talk about that later. But we were abusing it. And, and so we just slowly just started together, like getting farther and farther and farther away from traditional faith, from traditional church, and and just filling it up with all of this stuff that was not good. And we were just, we were just kind of starting to get into apostasy and start to deny our faith. But the thing was, it happened so slowly that we didn't really recognize what was happening. At least I didn't. And then it finally just kind of blew up. It blew up at one point after a couple of years so there were two couples in this group, and we found out that the wife from one couple and the husband from another couple were having an affair, and they ran off together. And it was a terrible, terrible thing. I mean, we were all like close. We'd been friends for years, and we thought we knew each other. We didn't know. It was just, it was devastating to all of us. And so we all just kind of went our separate ways. And I didn't talk to any of those people for a long time. I am in contact with some of them now. But so I spent the next couple of years focusing on my education. I didn't go back to church. I just focused on my education. And for a while, education kind of became my God. And I don't think I lost my faith, but I was definitely kind of wandering around aimlessly for a while. And if you've read my book and if you've heard my story, it was after this that I went through this horrible time. Some bad things happened to me, some things of my own doing, making dumb decisions. And I went through a terrible time of depression, suicidal depression. And then I ended up killing myself, committing suicide by taking sleeping pills, and died and had an out-of-body death experience. And God sent angels to help save me, and they were able to bring me back to life in the hospital. And I had this out-of-body death experience. Then that was the thing. God, then I've told the story many times, and I talk about this in my book, so I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but that was what happened to finally bring me back to God, was God just letting me get broken down to nothing. God taking me to the very bottom of bottoms, right? The bottom of anything, that you could possibly imagine. He let me go into death. And that was the thing that finally woke me up and brought me back to God. And so after that, then I had this period of falling in love with Jesus. And I've told about this even recently. I think the first video of this series, I told my testimony. And so I had this beautiful experience of just falling in love with God and with Jesus, because I was in love with Jesus when I was a little kid. And then I came back to him. And this is when I was in my early 30s. And for the very first time in my life, just me and God, me and Jesus, me reading the Bible alone. I wasn't even going to church yet at this point. And read a good book called The Sacred Romance, and that explained about a relationship with Jesus. And for the very first time in my life, I understood how to do that, how to have a relationship instead of just following a bunch of rules. And it changed everything for me, everything. And I felt just madly in love with Jesus. And then I started going to church again. God called me into a church. And so I started going to a non-denominational church. And I met my husband during this time. And so then we were both going to this church. And this was in St. Louis. And it was just kind of this real, safe church. It was one of the seeker-friendly churches, so so we didn't get too deep, it was kind of a social club, but we were going there, and we were serious, very serious about our relationship with God. So I have gotten back in contact with some of the people from that original group of the college students, and all but one of them, there's one other of them besides me who still says she's a Christian. Everybody else is either atheist, agnostic, and most of them, they hate Christians. They hate Christianity with a passion. And it's so sad. And that is what happened. And I believe that they have lost their salvation. I mean, it's obvious. Some people would say, well, they were never saved to begin with. But I think they were. And I think they chose to lose. They chose to walk away. And I know a lot of people believe that can't happen. But, and this is a whole other podcast topic. But my argument for that is that you don't lose your free will after you get saved. So I do believe it's possible to walk away, you're sealed with the Holy Spirit. Nobody else can take the Holy Spirit away from you, but I think you can remove the Holy Spirit from yourself. And so that is tragic, and it breaks my heart. And I still pray for these people almost every day.